Grab your coffee and join me, Nicoa, for a caffeinated conversation about life. I'll be talking to people who have chosen to walk their own paths and, just like me, are creating a life by design. I hope it will give you the inspiration you need to do exactly the same. Afternoon, Lori Pine. How are you?
I am so good. I'm with you today.
I know. I've been looking forward to this all day, all week. And I have to tell you, did you hear that I had COVID last week?
Well, I had it the week before, so you're just copying me. You're just trying to keep up with me, Nicole.
You are always one step ahead of me. I am not kidding.
Sorry about that one.
So, right? Aren't you so tired?
It took a while to get my mojo back. It's finally coming back.
Well, thank you for telling me that, because I tried to work out this morning. I was on the Peloton and I was like this, eyes closed. I was just going along. I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? So I just, I reeled it back, and I had a bit of a nap earlier. So I am prepared for today's conversation.
So good.
I also have my coffee. Do you drink coffee at the end of the day? I usually don't, but I had to.
Yeah, no. In fact, I am not a coffee drinker, period.
Oh, okay.
That?
In the interview.
I know. I needed to be honest with you right up front.
Well, that's what I love about you. You are authentic, transparent, and honest. And
I know. I just wanted to make sure you could still love me going forward.
I can make an exception. I get it. It's okay. And I just needed it because of the damn COVID hangover. So.
Yes.
Well, everybody, welcome to Coffee with Nicoa today. I'm going to give you a quick overview of this beautiful woman sitting in front of me. 25 years. And honestly, I'm reading this and I'm like, is this my story? Like, we really are like soul sisters. 25 years in a traditional corporate environment. Think black suits, stiff white shirts. Yeah. Working for global brands like Anheuser-Busch, the Coca-Cola Company, and Campbell Soup Company. You know, my daughter's name is Campbell. Did I tell you that?
She's darling.
I know. And she thinks we named her after the soup company. Well, you have to tell us all about working in those worlds because, it's pretty impressive. You made it all the way up to the top. You were a vice president. You were thriving. You had tons of pressure. And this was that life that you had grown accustomed to. And then, like so many others around the world, the shutdown of, we're talking about COVID, the shutdown of the global pandemic, and you had a wake-up call. And that's what we're going to talk about today, because that wake-up call, just like my wake-up call back in 2009, redefined for me what mattered most. And when we touched base before scheduling this interview, you really had some eye-opening moments, and I hope you'll dig deep into those today. Now, everybody, please go make a note. Lori is also now, because she's going to tell you her story. She's now an executive life coach for professional women over the age of 40 who feel stuck and empty despite all of their accomplishments. And where were you in 2009 when I was 40 years old? I quit that year, had no idea I was going to quit. Where were you when I needed you most? Oh
gosh, I was still climbing that corporate ladder, hell bent on, making my way and paving my path. And yeah.
Right. Thinking that was the way for, happiness, satisfaction, and contentment. That was the American dream, right?
That's right.
So what in the world happened?
Little did I know that a global pandemic would come. And, I had been a single mom for a long time, 7 years, raising 2 little boys by myself. I did ultimately remarry somebody wonderful. And there's a happy ever after in that story. But, the global pandemic comes and I'm leading this large team for Campbell's. And I'm sitting in this home office, and I had been accustomed to traveling every week. I was on a plane. I had people that reported to me on the West Coast, the East Coast, Midwest, Southeast, Texas. And,
Because you were in sales, customer service. Of course, you wanted to. You were the face of Campbell's for those regions. Right. Absolutely,
for my customer, and I had a young team. Some of my team had young children, and so when the world shut down, so did their daycare, so did their parents, and so it became a real humanitarian crisis on my team where they were working all night so they could take care of their kids all day, and It was really a struggle. And we went from doing our normal selling job to really becoming crisis management for transportation and supply and how do we get product and because the demand was so intense.
Wow.
Nobody could have prepared for that in the supermarket channel, which is where I worked. All the while, there was a humanitarian crisis going on in my own home that I wasn't paying attention to. I was so busy sitting at this desk on conference calls and Zoom calls that I couldn't even see what was happening in my own home. I had moved my youngest son from a very large public high school to a very small private high school in January of 2020. And I thought, oh, phew, this is going to solve everything. He's just going to be great. But he had only gotten 2 months there when the school shut down and he didn't know anybody. And what ended up
having challenges prior and that was kind of the solution. Let's give him a smaller school and
let's give him a smaller school where he gets more attention. He can't hide in the back of the room on his cell phone and just, kind of hang out all day and nobody really cares because he's not a behavioral problem and nobody's really pushing him because he's not, an academic genius. So they just don't really care. So they're not pushing him. And no matter how many times I went there, they couldn't be bothered with me either. So we moved into the small.
I was just to clarify, so everybody knows. So you had already been, in spite of you being busy, you'd been picking up on challenges you had some mental health challenges and you were like, I got to fix this.
Yeah.
But you're busy trying to run your corporate world and I get it.
I had been in the trenches with him for a long time with ADHD and, at the school and, 504 plans and, so this was not anything new, but high school brings a whole new craziness to it. So now he's a sophomore. We move him to this private school and then the pandemic shuts everything down. And at the same time, his brother was a senior that year. They're very close. And his brother that fall would leave for college. Yeah. And when he left, Bryce became noticeably more secluded, recluse, really didn't have a lot of friends. And, I'm just here working. I'm like, okay, this is just what he's going through. This is just what the world is going through.
Right.
And so when my oldest came home that year, he was very outspoken and said, Mom, what are you doing? We saw you more when you traveled every week, and you're right here in the house with us every day. And it was one of those off-the-cuff, flippant comments that probably only he could make, but it stopped me dead in my tracks. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I'm selling goldfish crackers. I'm not saving the world. I'm not coming up with the vaccine for COVID, right? What am I doing? So I really took a pause and just started to look around and, look at Bryce and, he's probably doing what most teenage boys were doing. He's like on his gaming while the teacher's on Zoom and the screen's black. And, then I went into his grades and he was like failing everything.
Oh.
Homeworks weren't turned in. It was just all half-assed. And I'm not paying attention. I don't even know this is going on. So I'm like, ooh, wake up call. So meanwhile, there's some other things going on. I'm not sure if he's depressed. I'm not sure what's going on with the friend situation. And so I start watching over the next couple of months, and it finally leads me to have some conversations with my husband. Now, mind you, I had been this single mom, solely financially responsible for these boys, nothing from my ex-husband. And to partner with somebody financially was very new for me. So to go to him and say, I think we need to do something for Bryce. I don't know what that is, but something perhaps different than what we're doing, where maybe I'm home more and available more. And my husband said, maybe it's time for you to take a break from corporate life. And
how did that feel?
I was like, I don't know. I mean, I was shocked, right? Like stuttering, like shocked. But the fact that he offered that was so generous and kind in a way that made me feel seen. That I just hadn't had. I just had not had that probably since my parents had treated me that way.
Oh, wow. And that's lucky too, right?
Yeah.
To have that kind of support. But
right.
yeah, and I know that not everybody has the partner in crime through these circumstances, but to have someone love you and support you and be able to say, whatever it is, we got this.
Yes.
You know,
and to love my child that much too.
Oh, yeah.
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 You know,
but this had been your identity for so long. And although, I mean, you know, I get it. I joked about this before. I'm going to write a book one day called I Feel Guilty for Not Feeling Guilty.
Yeah.
So, I mean, all the time, right? So, I mean, I had 3 kids. They'd be crying at the door when I'd leave the country for 2 weeks. And so I can only imagine this was kind of well, we need to do something for Bryce, but what? You want me to not work? That's my identity. How did that feel for you?
Oh, well, so it didn't really hit me until my first day not working. I mean, and then I was like, holy smokes, what do I do with myself?
Yeah.
But I did have the wherewithal to hire a coach of my own before I left.
Yep.
And so I ended up leaving in April. In February, I hired this coach and I started doing some of the work that said, you know, what do you dream about? What's your purpose? And I was a deer in the headlights.
Yeah.
I had no idea. In fact, I said to her, could you give me a test to tell me what my purpose is?
Yeah.
And she laughed, just like you're laughing right now. She laughed. And I said, no, I'm hoping that you can give me like this multiple choice sort of thing, like Myers-Briggs or something, and it will spit out what I'm supposed to do with my life. And she said, no, Lori. She said, your purpose is within you. And I said, well, we need to do an archaeological dig then to find it because it is so buried. I have no idea what it is.
I love that. An archaeological dig. Yeah, I do that with every freaking client. Yeah, and I know you do now too.
Yes, now I do it too because now I can see it. And I can only see it because I experienced it. So I know exactly what that look is like, huh?
Yeah.
You want a purpose? No. You see, I'm just trying to survive. I'm trying to keep a roof over our head. I want to make sure my kids become decent human beings in the world. Like that's my purpose.
Yeah, I'm supposed to take care of everybody. And what do you mean? What's my purpose? And then 7 o'clock on a Friday, when you finally come home from work and everybody's out of town, and you're like, what do I do with myself? Like, it's like you don't even. I didn't have hobbies. I don't know
hobbies.
I don't know the rest of the world. I was like, what is my hobby? Buying clothes for my children.
Yes.
When I traveled, because I go to the coolest clothing stores and spend all the money I was making on clothes for them. I mean, because I like clothes. That was like my only fun hobby.
Yes. There were times when they were so much better dressed than me.
All the time.
They were wearing Ralph Lauren, and I was wearing something from Walmart or Target. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So I got with this coach and I started doing some really heavy work. Now, I had done a lot of therapy work on the divorce and how I ended up in that situation. So a lot of that part was cleaned up, thank you, God. But the coaching work about the dreams, well, like I didn't have really any dreams. I was really just trying to, like get through and kind of get everybody else through.
That's not uncommon.
No. It is not
It's
uncommon.
really not. Even, with all due respect to my sweet husband, I said, well, what do you see this far down the road when we first started dating 5 years ago? And he's like, I don't usually think like that.
Right.
And so he's like learned to dream with me.
Yes.
But that was not common at all for him and most of my clients. So what was the part of the archaeological dig that really woke you up into purpose-driven knowing?
So I went through some exercises that really kind of gave me some breadcrumbs that said, I'm here for a purpose and I am unique. And there might be other people who can do what I do, but they're not going to do it the way I do it, with my thumbprint, with my personality. And so these breadcrumbs like start back in childhood and they go into middle school and high school. And like as you start to look back, you're like, oh, it's there all along. My uniqueness, my unique abilities. And so the way somebody else might do something isn't the way I will do it. But that's okay. I can still come out in the world and be this person, be this entity, be this thing. And I didn't really know that until I did the archaeological dig. There's a lot of safeness in working for a big company. You hide behind their brand and you hide behind their playbook and their rules. And there's a lot of, when you get this job, you do X, Y, and Z, and then you go to the next job, and then you do A, B, and C, and then you go to the right?
And unless you've spitting on somebody or stealing, then it's like you're in a mosh pit. Everybody just kind of holds you when you don't know what to do.
Yes.
Like you cannot drown unless you do something blatant or just have an attitude that's just not fitting with everybody. So the infrastructure keeps you safe and keeps you secure. And a lot of people don't think that way about corporations, and they think, I'm not safe. I'm like, you're safer than most.
Safer than most. Yes. Until you get into, kind of the higher levels where it's reorg after reorg after reorg. And I went through 12 reorgs, and it does become unnerving, the whole nature and culture of reorgs. And so I do work with some women who are like caught up in that culture.
That's true. And, they say the higher up you are, what is it, like a 5% retention rate anyway? So the highest roles, different. But I'm thinking about that middle 70.
That middle section. You're right. There's a structure that
hard to leave.
Well, my dad always talks to me about those golden handcuffs, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Those are tough to leave. 401k, company car, stock options, like that stuff's hard to walk away from. Yes.
Yes.
So the miracle in the Bryce story, my youngest child's story, is that I ended up asking the universe for a sign. I was out on my front yard one day and looking very schizophrenic, almost homeless, saying, God, I need a sign so clear that you're going to hit me with a 2x4. Like, it's going to be that obvious. And lo and behold, almost a week later, there was a sign so obvious that God was like, it is time for you to leave this job. And he set it up in such a way that I was able to leave, get a severance package, and just go do the next thing.
Perfect.
And I thought that I was going to be like this hero saving Bryce. But the truth is, she laughs. I hope all your listeners heard you laugh.
I know.
Right?
Bless your heart. I know.
Bless my heart. And my superwoman cape was on. But the truth was, this whole situation saved me.
Yeah.
And transformed me. And really gave me the space to, rethink all of my priorities. It gave me a whole new relationship with Bryce. Yeah. And he really transformed in that time. I mean, did a great turnaround, got a 4.0 his senior year, got academic awards, became the MVP of his lacrosse team, went on to play lacrosse in college, and really
well,
great.
Let's dissect it then, because you came, so you asked and you received.
Yes.
And I wish people would ask more often. You don't ask and go, but I want it to look like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right?
No.
Or you don't ask and say, yes, but, like, in any way, shape, or form. You just have to say yes and show me what needs me, show me how to get to my purpose, and allow me to receive it. Yeah. So you received it. But it couldn't have been that easy waking up that next morning and walking into Bryce's room saying, good morning, time for breakfast. Mama's here, right? Like, Bryce was probably like, what the hell, Mom? I'm trying to play a video game here, or I don't wake up till 11. This was the pandemic.
Well, in fact, I said to Bryce, so I'm leaving my job now and I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom. And he looks at me and he goes, now? I'm 17. Are you kidding me? So this did not come as great news to Bryce.
I bet not.
So we had to work at that. He was, by that time, they were back in class at school. And so he went to school and my husband went to work. And there I was with the two dogs. Like, okay, girls, what do we do next? I don't know. Okay, you stay here. I'm going to go to the grocery store. And then I did that about 3 times that day. I went to the grocery store. I came back. I went to Target. I came back. And then I didn't know what else to do with myself.
We hope you're enjoying listening to this episode of Coffee with Nicoa. Make sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode, and follow Coffee with Nicoa on Instagram to find inspiring content that will help you begin creating your life by design.
Tell us about the self-dialogue, because I'm always thinking about the people listening that, how are they talking to themselves during these big transitionary moments? And, what was it like to be you right then at the quit, at the change? Guess what, y'all? I published a book. Your Life by Design, a Coffee with Nicoa self-care coaching journal, is now available on Amazon. This interactive journal begins and ends with powerful queries, guiding you on a quest for the kind of life by design you don't need a vacation from. I've included an in-depth look at strategic self-care to empower you and hold you accountable to really getting to know your true self. It's time to prioritize you. Use the link in the show notes to buy yours today.
Well, my productivity equaled my self-worth. And if I wasn't going to be productive, then I wasn't going to have much self-worth. Mm. And so without a title and without a paycheck, we were coming up pretty short-handed.
What were you telling your neighbors when they'd say, what are you doing now, Lori? What'd you say?
Thank God there's enough acreage between us that they don't know my comings and goings.
So you didn't. She didn't tell them, people.
Nope,
let's let them ask at the next holiday party.
Did not have to mention that at all.
I get it. I mean, we've been looking so long for external validation for whatever reason, in our upbringings. And it's really hard. I have actually coached more people transitioning into retirement, or that's easier, but transitioning out of a big role, and they'll be in their 50s or 60s. And they're like, help me articulate what I should say, because they were so caught up in there. I was the CEO of such and such, or I, ran my own business for 15 years and now it failed. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, or it closed. And I'm like, well, let's just tell the story. Let's tell it in a way that was a learning and not of a judgment. And I'm curious, how do you now tell that story?
Yeah, it's really interesting because the pandemic was a very common exit for a lot of women.
True.
There's a statistic that it's almost like 3.5 million women exited during that time. Mm. A lot of it was childcare needs. A lot of it was burnout. So my story is that the pandemic really gave me a chance to prioritize my family in a way that I had never been able to. Mm-hmm. And when I did that, I was able to get clear on who I wanted to be in this next chapter of my life.
And who was that?
I wanted to be somebody of service, somebody who could give back what I'd been given, help those who I could help. I've had a lot of lessons, you get to work for those big companies, you learn a lot. But there was a lot of life that happened in there, from the divorce and raising the boys to I lost my mom when she was 59, and it was real quick, short battle with a rare form of cancer. And, just like, and then you have to keep going, right? Like corporate life doesn't stop because your heart's broken, so how do you keep going in those times? And then, remarrying, trying to build a blended family.
How did you keep going? I want to go back to losing your mom, because grief, we're dealing with the loss of my father a year and a half ago and watching my mother go through that grief. And so how did you turn that grief? My mom always says, I try to turn my grief into gratitude as she cries. Like, Mama. But she was with him 67 years. I mean, to lose your mom when she was so young, I mean, that's 4 years from now for me. Yeah. So tell me, how did you manage?
There was a lot in that time frame. The real gratitude I had at the time was that it wasn't one of my children.
Yeah.
I have friends who've lost a child. That's a grief I can't imagine. And, I hope that that's not a grief I ever have to imagine. But I have a faith that, if I have to, I will. But Jesus, right now, I hope that that's not one that's part of my journey. But, I think that what really compounded things for me was my mom and dad had been married for 42 years. They got married young, like right out of high school. And my dad very quickly moved on.
Oh.
I mean, like 5 minutes later, moved on.
Oh, moved on, like found somebody else moved on.
Oh, yes. She came with hot soup wearing a, mink coat. Yes.
Oh.
Knocking at the door.
Well, he was too afraid to be alone.
So afraid and so heartbroken. Mm-hmm. And, it wasn't like she was sick for 5 years. It was 5 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
She thought she had a backache. And before you know it, she's got cancer all through her body.
Oh my God. And
she's gone.
Wow.
And her funeral was 5 days before Christmas. And it was it was so heartbreaking. And so it was the middle of winter. I grew up in Maine. My dad was in Maine. It was so horribly depressing for him when we all left and went back after New Year's. And so somebody came along and brought soup and checked on him. And before you know it, he's getting married again.
And how are you taking care of you through all of this? Are you dealing with it? Are you ignoring it? Are you just focused on Bryce or work?
So I had the benefit of being in New York versus where everybody else was in Maine. So I had some distance. So it wasn't right in my face like everybody else. And so I could ignore it a little bit.
Yeah.
But it was devastating. And I had met my husband and we had dated for 9 months and we had broken up for a year. And we were broken up during this time that my mother had passed. And, he, lo and behold, he came back around in March after she passed. And so, that was kind of a distraction the year after she died, was that he was back in my life. And, but this grief is still something I'm working on. Her anniversary this year was one of the hardest anniversaries I've had.
Oh.
And I couldn't understand why. And I worked with my therapist on it and just said, I do not understand this. This is year 12. I should be good. And she's like, that's not how grief works.
That's a good reminder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But see, I want to be like this. I want to be all tidy in a box and nope, I'm good. I'm moving on with my life. And that's just not how it is. Yeah.
So that's a big lesson. And I'm sure that you've applied that into your Life by Design now as to how do you manage the ups and downs. I look at some of your speaking titles and engagements. You talk about warning, bumps ahead, and some of the takeaways. Share with us a little bit about some of those, that real self-insight that you're now applying when you interact and engage your clients.
Yeah. I mean, in a coaching engagement, of course, it's not about me, it's about them. But I try to be as transparent and honest as I can in anything my client might read about me, my website, my blog post, my social media, because it's so important to be relatable. For somebody to be able to identify in and say, wow, she's been through that. I'm going through that right now. And that's what motivated me. There was a time, kind of like you jokingly opened this whole podcast with, where was somebody when I was going through, and fill in the blank? I was crying myself to sleep, raising these 2 boys by myself, preparing for a huge presentation, and feeling so alone and unseen and misunderstood. And, I had a therapist, but she didn't work in corporate America. So she had no idea the demands of my job, what it was like. And I wished for somebody like me that could sit across from me. I have this 3-hour Joy Power Boost session. I wish that somebody would sit with me for 3 hours and problem solve something that was keeping me up at night that I just couldn't stomach anymore.
Yeah.
But nobody existed. I couldn't find anybody like that.
So you're on your own. You're out working with Bryce, trying to be this stay-at-home mom. I mean, tell me a little bit about how long that lasted before you kicked in with becoming the Joy CEO and launching your business.
Well, we kind of have a joke because it wasn't shortly after I left my job that a friend said, hey, I'm going to Greece for 2 weeks. I've got an Airbnb. Want to come? And I was like, yeah. So I went to Greece for a week. And then after that, I went on another trip to DC to meet a girlfriend. And then after that, I went to Maine because we have a lake house. That's where I grew up. And then after that, I was turning 50. So I had like 3 trips with girlfriends. And so Bryce looks at me one day, 6 months into this, and he says, for a stay-at-home mom, you're never home. And I was like, oh. Yeah. So I think there's some truth to that. But meanwhile, he's like thriving and doing great.
He's doing great.
Yeah. When I am home, I've got dinner on the table. I'm talking to him like he's good.
But it really wasn't about Bryce. That's kind of the point here, everybody.
Back to the point, right?
Back to the point. It's not about Bryce. We love you, Bryce, baby. But
yes.
And we're not worried about you anymore. But
Bryce was the impetus.
Yeah, and I think things happen. Here it is. Things happen for a reason. They really do. And each of the souls in our life, our family unit, are showing up for us in a way that we must have agreed to before we came down here and started living this family dynamic. So when they're reacting to life in a way that's triggering us, why is that happening for us? And whether you could see it for what it was in that moment, clearly you can see it now in retrospect.
100%.
Yeah.
And here's a funny thing. I had an expectation that I was going to get my stuff together in a certain time frame. Like as soon as Bryce graduated, that's it. I'm ready. I'm gonna be all neat and tidy with a bow. But the truth is, like, my spirit wasn't ready. And I didn't know how burnt out I was. Just how to my core exhausted I was. And so I kept trying to rush things, like that little engine that could. And every corner I turned, it was like, not yet. Not yet. Nope.
Give us an example.
So while Bryce was finishing up his last semester of high school, I went to Rutgers and got my certification in executive coaching. And so as soon as I got my certification, I'm like, okay, shingles up. I'm ready.
That's right.
Yeah. And so I, started to coach people, and, I'm kind of getting my momentum. By that summer, I formed an LLC, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to be available to the world. And then that fall, I had done a brand photo shoot. I was building a website, the whole thing. And it was like doors kept slamming. Like it was just like, not yet, not yet. Like, and the truth was, I was still so tired. Yeah. And I'm still in my coaching program. I'm still with my coach today. And I wasn't resolved.
Right.
I wasn't in a good headspace where I could coach somebody clearly and really show up in a way that allowed me to be a vessel in a safe space. I still had too much chatter.
Yeah. And that is always the case for most people who quit some big role in their life they've been in for a long time and they go try to start something new. I call it a couple things, same circus, different tent, right? Yeah. Still burning yourself out. I got this, I did this, the checklist. You're still sitting at the desk all day and it's your, growing your business. And then wait, what? And I also think that people don't recognize that it's not about the doing and the identity. It's about the way of being. And until your body is ready, and your body is a powerful messenger, until it's ready, the doors will keep shutting. So what was your relationship like with your body during all of this? Were you hearing those messages of fatigue?
Yeah. Yeah. Like an afternoon nap almost every day.
Right? Me too.
I'm like, am I getting old? Or like, what is this? I didn't take a nap every day when I was working. Like,
I know.
Yes. And the need for, this time of year, the need for sunshine, and like, I really can't handle the cold anymore. And so, really being intentional with having my happy lamp on and getting, some of that in, taking a couple of trips. But it's really been powerful meditation, intentional journaling, really deep connections with women. So one of the things that I did do when I left my job was I kept Googling for a networking group in my community, and I could not find one. How could there not be an executive women's networking group in my community?
Oh my gosh, right?
I live an hour north of Manhattan. Yeah. But I could not find one. And so I really kept talking to God and the universe and it came to me like, it's time for you to start one. And so back in the fall, I started one, and it is blossoming into this wonderful web of brilliant women who live in this community, who are looking for the same thing I am, to really connect with other amazing executive women. And we just had an event last week, and I can't even tell you the caliber of women who came out. So
I'm not surprised. And what you just said, you just summarized something rather profound that I hope everybody was listening, because we've been talking a lot about strategic self-care in the last couple of months as I rolled out a journal recently. And that strategic self-care, what percentage of that were you doing for 25 years?
Zero.
Exactly. Zero. And if people, and I've said this the other day, I was like, we're not telling you to quit your job, everybody. If anything, we wish, Lori and I wish we knew what we know now back then, so we could have continued to get those great benefits. And if we could have figured out how to thrive even more, we didn't know what we didn't know. No. And it took a dramatic, like you said, the door had to be big, like the big message had to really hit you. And learning that strategic self-care, did you learn that from coaching? At what point did you begin to give yourself permission to actually implement strategic self-care tactics?
Yeah. So yes, from some coaching, but really from this continuous message that kept coming that was not from me. This was not my voice that said, start an executive women's networking group in your area.
Perfect.
And then just the courage to be bold enough to do it, just to start. The first event I had, 57 women came.
Oh my gosh, right? That's amazing.
So just, just being courageous. And instead of saying, who do I think I am? Saying, okay, here we go. Let's do this.
And how is your life by design different now? I mean, how long? It's only been since 2021, right? That you left. So it's only been a few years. But how would you say your way of being is different than it was just 3 years ago?
It's different in so many ways. I think I'm much calmer. I think I go at a slower pace, which is such a positive thing. I think I'm much more intentional with who I spend time with and how I spend my time. And I really think that I'm in a place now of service. Like I'm not out just to work for a company and get a paycheck and have a big title. I am really out to do meaningful work that will, pay me well, but it will have an impact on others. And that's really my goal.
Do you think if you could not have left and you knew what you know now, what would you have done differently inside the corporation? So I think about a lot of these women who actually really love their work, like we both did, but they really, maybe they're not in a situation where they can leave, or they really don't want to leave, but they know they need to do something different to find the joy that you talk about having craved back then and didn't even know it was missing. Mm-hmm. What would you do differently?
So I did do a lot when I was in organizations. I started mentoring groups. I was part of, employee resource groups and helped lead those. The problem that I experienced is that is all fluff and it doesn't drive the business, right? It doesn't drive the bottom line. Mm-hmm. So it's not deemed valuable. In fact, my boss said to me, you can't make a full-time job out of doing that. But those spaces were where I had the most passion, mentoring others, creating, programs for the employee resource groups where we could talk about these sorts of topics. There was a safe forum and a safe space to have bold conversations like this.
And you could draw the line. I mean, you're talking to an HR professional, so I would have to say there is a bit of a line to those individuals and those connections that you made. I'm sure that the women that you were mentoring are more grounded and more powerful as a result because they had you 100%. To interact with. So it does impact the bottom line, but it is also the first thing to freaking get cut when it comes to the budgeting. So, I used to think you had to be inside to make the difference. But I have found since I've been out for 15 years and as you're starting to find out you can influence and move the needle and pull the levers as a third party influencing these executives and the different roles much more powerfully than if you're inside having to wear all the hats simultaneously. Yeah.
All those hats that come down to reorgs and, cost cutting and people cutting and all those things. Yeah.
Well, for sure. If you and I were going to sit in front of a group of women right now that say we cannot leave, because I really want to give these individuals listening I want them to feel empowered. So they're not hanging up from this, listening to this podcast and saying, well, crap, I should just go and quit. I want them to find a way to change the culture. Like if I could do it now, which I'm not going back because I'm too old and tired now. But if I was in there right now, I would do really bold things like leave at 3:00 to go pick up my kid and not apologize. And and if companies fired me, I'd just keep getting fired until the one company said absolutely. Because at the end of the day, you're getting paid for an outcome, right? And, I don't care how many hours it takes you. I don't care if you can do it in 10 hours or 92 hours a week. You're going to get paid for 40 hours. Get the work done. If you need to leave at 3 to go get your kid, leave at 3. Now, there could be a consequence to the game you're playing in that company. And when you realize that, look, I can't leave at 3 or I'm going to miss the 5:30 coffee chat with all the good old boys in that one corner office, then I better stick around if I want to play the game that way.
Right.
Or I just go and they don't get me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be a part of that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm curious what you would tell maybe your younger self about how could you have balanced more powerfully or felt more confident in focusing on the boys outside of work, more of a thriving than a striving to just keep playing the game?
I think it's what you're talking about. It's that keeping up with the boys, you know, the men in the organization and trying to be a part of. And that I think that comes down to knowing your worth, knowing who you are and what your strengths are. That is critical. And most women cannot articulate their own strengths.
Yeah.
At least that's what I'm finding. And so when you can articulate your strengths and you have a confidence to sit across from your boss or somebody you're interviewing with, and you can say, this is what I bring to this organization. This is how I'm unique. This is what I do differently than perhaps anybody else. Then you've got job security.
You do. Confidence is a big thing. I don't care if you're sweating buckets when you make those comments to people, but this is how you know. When you know that conversation you have with your best friend, your best girlfriend, you're drinking wine and you're like, I know, man, they don't even realize because I did ABC and I'm the one that fixed that and I'm the one who made sure that we won that contract. That story, pick it up and apply it to the real conversations at work.
Here's what women don't do enough of. They do not toot their own horns. They do not claim their own work enough. And for those listeners listening that want to stay in their corporate roles, my coaching advice would be to be much more intentional about claiming their work. Because here's the thing, nobody knows what they're doing, especially in this whole messy hybrid craziness that's going on right now. People are too busy focusing on themselves and their work and their own desires and motivations. They have to be told what you're doing in order for you to be seen. And
how do I do that, Lori? How do I do that without sounding like I am just a bitch and I'm just bragging?
So guess what, Nicoa? None of the men that you're worried about or that you're working with are worried about being a bitch or worried about being too hotty-toddy or any of that.
Nope.
They are claiming what they do. They might even be claiming more than what they do. And they're sitting across from their boss with a long laundry list of what it is that they've accomplished.
Yep.
And women are playing small and diminishing themselves. And they're using words like we and as a team and, you know, so-and-so on my team did this. Well, that's all well and good. But at the end of the day, you've got to claim your own victories.
And you can do it in a way, guys, that's humble and is powerful and charismatic. And you do it like this. You say, well, I'm really, and you spend time marketing. I like the word that you just used, Lori. You said intentional. So if you're in any organization and you would like to be noticed and or promoted and or be considered for a project that you're sitting in the corner thinking, how come nobody's asking me? Then it's really important that you see yourself as someone who needs to be marketed. And that becomes really, not only are you marketing yourself, but your piece of the pie here. So you can still champion the people on your team and you can still champion your department. But you start with yourself, and it's not braggadocious. It's marketing. It's strategic marketing in order to get you what you want. Now, you don't have to do these things, and that's fine. And I can hear some women now saying, well, I would never do that. I would never not start with the team. Say, that is absolutely fine. And you will stay with that team. That's okay. Yes. But you got to be, you can't have it both ways. You can't, say, well, it really wasn't me. And then they go, oh, okay, well, who was it? Because we want to promote the person who just led that group and made that happen. So you got to pick and choose. So, pull up your big girl panties and take a big deep breath and put on that extra deodorant and antiperspirant and walk in there, or send the email that says, I want to really do a big shout out for the work we just accomplished. And I led the team to do ABC.
That's exactly right. Yep. And there's no shame in that.
None.
In fact, the game. The company needs to know.
They want to know. They're paying you good money.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. Shout it from the rooftops. There's joy in that.
There is. Tell us about how you came. I started you down this path before, and forgive me, I got up on my soapbox about that. But how did you decide that you were the Joy CEO?
So I went through this training program, this certification class at Rutgers, and in there we had to do a branding presentation. Like, who were we going to coach? And I did the best branding presentation. Everybody clapped and they called me afterwards and they were like, you did the best. And I looked at it afterward and I was like, that was so awful. I cannot coach like that. So it was like all these people in despair. They've been through divorce. They've been through loss, like all these circumstances I've been through. And I was like, if I have to coach all these heavy circumstances all day long, I'm going to jump off the bridge. I can't do this heavy stuff all day long. I am a light, happy person. I mean, yes, I've gone through these experiences, but like I've gotten to the other side to where I am living this joyful life today. I'm remarried. The boys are doing great. I got 2 golden retrievers. We are good, right? Like I've done some heavy lifting work. We are good. So I started to like get out a pen and say, okay, well, who am I going to coach then? Like, am I going down the wrong path? So I started to make all these notes, like, what am I going to do? And I hired this woman to do this branding photo shoot and everything. And in that, she said, who are you going to coach? And I was like, well, I'm kind of struggling with this. And so we went through this whole thing. And I said, but the word I keep coming back to is joy. I want them to find joy. So the photo shoot was all these bright colors. There are the pictures on my website. All these bright colors.
You got to go look. It's LoriPine.com, right? Or is it LoriPine.com? Right.
Yes.
So you got to go check it out because it is the most beautiful pink and green and orange. And oh my God, I was so happy and so jealous when I was like, oh, I like her website so much better than mine.
Thank you.
It brought me joy.
Oh, see, that's the point. That was my goal. So I wanted all the joy. And so afterwards, she's a brand strategist. So she does these photos, but then she's a brand strategist. And I said, I need a name. And so we just kept talking. And she said, I think you could be the Joy CEO. And I was like, huh. I said, helping women know that they can be the Joy CEO of their own life.
Beautiful.
Like I don't have the corner on joy. I'm not a monk here that I'm going to teach you everything to know about joy, but empowering women to know that when they embrace joy, when they find joy for their life, it has a ripple effect that will touch everybody in their life. And that is beautiful.
It is beautiful. Oh, I love it so much. Share with us some of you do this thing where you're talking about who's in your hula hoop. What is that presentation about? Or which one of these? You have such fun, like titles and like not your bubblegum kind of joy. Let's go with that one. Like, so how do we know we're in joy? When part of the challenge is most people are like, I don't even know what hobby I like. Right. So what is joy? I've asked people, what is your definition of love? And they don't even know how to articulate it. So I can imagine if you asked me back in the day, are you filled with joy? What brings you joy? I would have just said something like, holding my baby, like holding my daughter or laughing. Like, what is joy for you?
So here's the thing. The women that I'm talking to, they don't really care about joy. They just want some time freedom. They want a nap. They want somebody to pick up some groceries. Like that's joy.
They
right?
can't even think about it.
Right. Like this idea of joy being this like big thing and I'm going to have this euphoric bliss is not happening. So what I really try to do is break down joy as these like micro moments. And joy is so accessible. It already exists within you. And when you stop and give yourself permission to just say, oh yeah, oh my gosh, right here, this thing, the funny shaped clouds in the sky, the rainbow that I can just chase for another 5 minutes if I keep on going, putting my bare feet in the grass, like holding that baby. I have a freebie for your listeners. It's, 61 ways to find joy. It's just a thought starter that they can download. It's like the ultimate guide to getting some joy fast and quick because we complicate it.
Yeah.
And we think that it's got to be this big fancy vacation and it costs $20,000 and I got to plan for it and save for it and it's going to be 10 months from now. No, like right here, right now, we can access joy.
Yes, and we have to integrate it into our current life. Even if it's the busiest life in the world, you have to find the little things. Like this Uniball Air pen is my favorite type of pen, and I only buy this pen. And I have a whole bunch of them, and I make sure I use this pen every day. I mean, it's the silliest thing, right? But
I have that pen, but in pink.
Oh, perfect.
Isn't that so fun?
Well, because if you're not finding ways to intentionally get out ahead of it and integrate it throughout your day, then you're always going to be seeking something that if this, then that, or when I'm on vacation, then I'll be able to relax and have joy.
And then we squander our life.
Yeah, because it's happening right now.
And we can't get that time back.
No, we cannot. What are some of the more fun things that you've incorporated into your life by design now that make you feel joyful?
Oh my gosh. So I just was in the car for 15 minutes and I had the radio up so loud. You would think that I was a Taylor Swift concert of my own or Beyonce. I had Girls Run the World on. I mean, and nice. I was like my own, and I actually convinced myself I can sing good because the music's up so loud I can't hear myself. So yeah.
Oh, I love that. I do have the house, all the speakers. I'll crank it. I have my own playlist. I have a badass playlist. I called it the badass playlist. And I enjoy it very much. And if I'm having a tired, hard morning, getting up out of bed, I'll just go on the Sonos and crank it. And I'm just like, all right, let me get up.
Yes.
Even an outfit will get me out of the bed. Like, I love clothes so much. I'm like, what should I wear today? And that would motivate me back in the corporate days too, just to get up. I would like, I have that new outfit, or I'm going to wear that cool suit that I really like. So I think our message here to everybody, Lori, is that you guys have to own it. You have to decide whether that means quitting your damn job and focused on what matters most to you, or if it means, you know what, redefining how you're going to interact in the current organization you're in, or how you're going to start making that relationship that you've got with your partner mean something else than what you've been complaining about.
Yes. Gosh, we could riff on that one for a while.
Oh my God. We still got time. Go, girl.
The relationship one, if your work is always first, it's not going to work. You're going to end up with a roommate. And so at some point, you have to stop and let somebody know that they matter, that you see them. In the middle of the pandemic, my world was just so important, and we had empty grocery store shelves, and we had, customers that were counting on us. And my husband runs his own company. He has for 30 years. He does investments and financial planning and life insurance. And, I think I'm so important over here with my big VP title. And he came up one day and he's like, I really need to talk to you. And I was like, I'm busy. We got a goldfish crisis. We're missing 2 trailer loads and the customer's looking for me. And he's like, no, I really need to talk to you. And he had this look on his face. And I was like, okay, let me shut my camera off, put myself on mute. I'm just going to hide from this conference call for a minute. And he said, one of my favorite longest clients died.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, I don't deal with that. Like, I'm not dealing with that, right? And they had life insurance and investments with him. And he's like, I'm so upset. There's no funeral. I can't go. I can't be with the family. And here I am thinking I'm so important and I'm so busy and I can't be bothered with my husband. And I went back onto the meeting and I said, guys, I'm going to have to let you handle this. I need to step away for a minute. And like, I had to really like just hug my husband and I'm sorry, but he needed to matter in that moment.
Of course. Yeah.
And so like, how many times are we so busy that we're just not seeing the signs?
That's
not catching that they have needs too, like that our needs or the kids' needs or the dog's needs or like whatever, the snowstorm. Yeah. And I just think that that's really important to pay attention, to have open communication, to say, hey, here's what's really happening. Here's what's really going on. Yeah.
And giving yourself permission to delegate like you did and step into that space and recognize that he was role modeling for you too, that, hey, when something important happens, as a man, right? He said, no, I need you. No, I need you. And he stayed there until he got what he wanted, which is really a great role model. Yes. This is important. And in this relationship, this is an expectation I have. It's like the reverse boundary, right? It's the opposite of the boundary.
Yes.
It's, no, I need you.
Yeah. Yes. He's very good. Yes.
I think it's beautiful.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And, I think we can be tired and we can be like, I don't have time for any of that other stuff. And, and then weeks and months can go by and then we're lonely and, like we need to pay attention.
And you'll know that you're not focused on a balanced approach to your life when you start getting really irritated, frustrated, annoyed, when you dread pushing the Zoom button. These are all signs. And if your body's not yelling at you with, illness or pain or, something, you're going to get shut down. Now, fortunately for you, it didn't cost you physically, you had an emotional state of what mattered most to trigger you to get out of that organization. And so that was helpful. You're lucky because a lot of these clients I have, they're having heart attacks or, they're just not listening to themselves, nor are they listening to the people around them. So the questions are, what matters most, right? What matters most to you? And how willing are you to really behave in a way that fosters what matters most to you, right? And prioritizes it.
Yeah. Yes, exactly right. And, I think it comes down to all that fear, am I going to be okay? Am I going to have what I need? And I think that the truth is, like, if we go back to the whole breadcrumbs analogy, we have proof that it always works out. It always does.
Yeah. It's going to be okay. Everything is always okay, even when it's not okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Every time. Yeah.
We could talk all day. We have lots of soapboxes, people. We could jump right up on them. We got all sorts of advice for you. Talking to the choir here, each of us. Well, why don't I give you some time here at the end to share what you're working on? Tell us more if there's ways that people can get engaged with you if they're listening from your area. And also, what else you could offer up to let people come and check out from, the CEO, the Joy CEO.
So I am working on helping, busy, empty women reclaim their joy. I have a freebie for your listeners. It's the ultimate guide to finding their joy. In it is my Joy CEO playlist on Spotify. So I share it in that freebie.
Oh, great.
Beyonce's in there.
I should put my badass playlist on there too. I'll do it.
Well, share it with me.
Yes. I will, girl.
And I would love to have you come follow me on Instagram at Lori Pine and check out my website, loripine.com. But most importantly, just this idea, to spread this idea that when women are empowered to find joy, it will impact everyone in their orbit. Friends, family, children, partners, colleagues, community. And that ripple effect can literally change the world.
Absolutely. You're changing the world. And I'm going to ask you one last question before we wrap up. And I usually ask my clients this, but I'm going to do a twist. So I usually say, what's one thing you want to celebrate about yourself before we hang up? But now I'd like to ask you, what's the most powerful thing you want to celebrate about your life by design before we hang up?
It's really leaning into this idea that my self-worth is not linked to my productivity. And that has been my journey the last 3 years. So, yes.
You are enough, my friend.
Thank you so
enough
much.
Before you were productive. You're enough when you're napping. You are enough. And I am so honored to meet you.
Likewise, my friend. Likewise.
You are making the world a more joy-filled place. And thank you for being a guest on Coffee with Nicoa.
Oh, my gosh. It was my pleasure. Thank you for letting me bring along my Stanley Cup that the TikTokers taught me I needed.
I was holding my Yeti. I have this big ass Yeti right here, and my thumb is starting to hurt. I'm like, is it too heavy? Like, oh my God. I should just stick to my little coffee cup, my little Yeti.
It's perfect.
Thanks for joining us for a caffeinated conversation. Subscribe to Coffee with Nicoa for more stories from people living a life by design. You can also find inspiration on Instagram. Just follow Coffee with Nicoa. And check out our website, coffeewithnicoa.com. And that's Nicoa, Nicoa. We look forward to talking with you soon, and enjoy your coffee between now and then.